Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. What a title for a book review series. This is series 285, a book I've been reading. Jung and Remote Viewing, Psychic and Anomalous Perception, David Shaver. And you see that tree on the front of this book? It takes a while doing this research to try to put ideas together to come up with conclusions. So if you've been watching some of my previous videos and ones from the past, I'm reposting things on BitChute after recently being terminated from Vimeo and almost 10 months ago being terminated from YouTube after almost 10 years. And I've been reading books and researching since 2005, trying to figure out WTH, what the heck is going on? And here we are now, April 21st, Tuesday, in a world lockdown, and all kinds of thoughts out there. Reopen the country, extend the lockdown, and maybe reopen it in months, or maybe a year, or even 2 years, and injecting everybody on the planet with a vaccine with God knows what in it. And you have to ask yourself, what crazy forces are behind all this? And if you've been watching my videos and listening to other people, Max Egan, David Icke, Brian Rose, Richie from Boston, Deborah Chaveras, Dane Wigington, and so many more. I can't name them all. And some people have passed on. Some people have been murdered trying to do the research to get the truth out. So you talk about a topic like this, Jung and Remote Viewing. So I guess that would be Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, physician, physicist, working with other physicians and psychiatrists and people trying to understand reality. Psychic and anomalous perception. Jung and remote viewing. So what is remote viewing? Well, apparently remote viewing is being able to go into a meditative state, whether it's self-induced or drug-induced or hypnotic suggestion, however they do it. There's different ways. And going into another reality, not this physical reality you see on this video, but some kind of fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional, crazy looking psychedelic, like you've been on LSD reality. And I know I talk about a lot of things, but I think the conversation is important. Because the people who control our planet apparently are into the Kabbalah, which happens to be historically the religion of Jewish people. According to the 1973 Encyclopedia Judaica published in Israel, I've shown the book, I've made the videos. So the Kabbalah, the way I understand it, in my videos, I'm trying to take people to the shortcut of understanding reality. You can watch videos and about all these people giving these philosophies and New Age and their thoughts. But where does it leave you? Are you more confused? Are you getting somewhere? Have you been deceived? So I use these books and I use my props and stuff, pictures, whatever, to kind of get my point across, because I'm in this also. Making these videos, I'm trying to come to a conclusion and understand. Because probably like everybody else, I assumed, since I was young, going to church and all of that, that, you know, there was a God and we're supposed to be good people and we elect our officials and they're supposed to be looking out after us. But so much has happened in my lifetime, especially since I woke up in 2005, after 2001, 9/11. You know, prior to that, all I was worried about was getting an education, a career, making some money, buying some property, enjoying life. I didn't have a whole lot of deep thinking on this crazy question of WTH, what the heck is going on? So I've done all this work making these videos. So I hope that this video can help somebody get a little bit closer to understanding reality. And I mean, these are things that if you don't go do research on or grow up into, you just can't grasp it. And if you barely grasp a Christianity, or if you're Arab and you're into Islam, or even the people into Hinduism, Buddhism, how really deep do all of us get in these religions? What do we know about this eye? It looks like a reptilian eye, and the rays behind it, and also similar symbols on the back of the dollar bill. What do we really know? We don't know, because we don't have time to know. We really don't care. But it's affecting our reality. The people who do know, the people behind these organizations behind me, the Kabbalah, the mysticism, the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberger Groups, Club of Rome, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, the Golden Dawn, the Satanic organizations, the United Nations, the Zionists, the State of Israel. These people that control our reality, that have us in lockdown right now, are highly organized, highly educated, highly knowledgeable, have been working towards the goal of a global world order for quite a while, and they are into mysticism and the Kabbalah and apparently witchcraft, and we can tell by the symbols. So, the shortcut to this conversation, we'll start out with what they call the Kabbalah tree of the Sephiroth. You've probably seen symbols that look like this. You probably thought, oh, you got the chakra system. I'm supposed to get the energy to rise through my body and raise my kundalini and find God or whatever. Well, I'm going to tell you the simple answer for the Sephiroth is the circles from the bottom, assuming the bottom one is the earthly plane. And if you move up on the left side, you're moving up through the different dimensions with a feminine aspect. And if you move up on the right side of this tree, you're going through the different dimensions on a masculine aspect. And if you move up through the center, you're going through the different dimensions on an androgynous male and female aspect of reality. So you go into these dimensions. Think of it this way. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. I mean, but true or not, I'm not trying to argue that point. So you go into these different dimensions, and how do you get there? Let's say you meditate or take a drug, and you wind up in another reality. Maybe your body's laying on a mat or whatever, or a chair if you belong to the government's organizations of remote viewing. They got these special chairs, and this little tablet you can write on, and you leave your body and you go into this place that you are targeted towards going. So they call it a target. But if you're into the Kabbalah and mysticism, you're going into these different planes, and apparently the higher you can raise into the mystery world, the closer you get to the so-called God. Okay, so that brings us to another question. Which God? Seriously. Which God? In the Bible, it says a third of the angels were cast out into the underworld. So in heaven, 2/3 of the angels are still there. A third of the angels are in the underworld, and here we are in physical reality, planet Earth. So when you die, apparently, not everybody goes to heaven. Some people go to the underworld. I know it's crazy, and a lot of people want to be in denial, but to understand the government being into remote viewing, and people like Carl Jung and Freud, a lot of stuff in this book. David Shaver wrote the book. And so I've been reading it. And the first part of the book, up to page 67, all these pages I read here, was all about, that's page 17. It was on and on since Socrates and Plato and all these people who were thinkers. And they kept saying, how do we know what we know? What makes us do what we do? And they came to the conclusion that outside forces interact with our world. So you have the mind, the human body, consciousness. And you have this mural behind me, an apple tree, a monkey, squirrel, a bird, whatever, a pumpkin. You have the material world, a house, a plane. And you have me seeing with my eyes, trying to explain what I've been reading here and do it in a short way. So you have me thinking, ideas, questioning, being alive, making decisions, not being a robot or a puppet. So there's some of us that go that way and some of us that go other ways. We all know that there's different kinds of people on planet Earth. Apparently, the Freud and Carl Jung and so many people in this book, and Socrates and Plato, have figured out that the conscious mind and the unconscious mind together make us what we are. We do things that we don't know why we do sometimes. We feel sad or happy or moody, whatever, because we don't know why we feel that way. It's called consciousness. So we're affected by our own processing, our own history, our own family training in school. I don't care if you're an Arab or an Islamic or from Asia and you're Hindu or Buddhist or from Florida or Germany or Italy and you're Christian, or South America Christian or Mayan or whatever. You are a product of your education. But the second component, your subconscious, think about this. Your subconscious is contributing to your reality, your perception of everything, your reaction, your actions. So the subconscious apparently is connected to everything. So not only are we individual beings, but our subconscious is created to everything. And it's maybe 50% of our activities. Interestingly enough, just to make this a little more crazier, apparently Freud, Jung, and other people, and way back with Plato and Socrates in history a couple thousand years ago, they were trying to figure it out. You have all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. And so they came up with these archetypes. Now think about this, and maybe it'll help us all understand each other. So you can look this up. It's called archetypes. So on the bottom there, you got the rebel, the lover, the seducer, the ruler, the magician, the joker, the creator, the caregiver, the mentor, the orphan, the child, the warrior. So here on planet Earth, there's 12 different type of archetypes. You know, we're all if you know anything about astrology, and you were born in any one of the astrological signs, which obviously we all were born in one or the other. You can be an Aquarian or a Leo or a Taurus. Interestingly enough, I think there were originally 13 astrological signs, and the one that they took out, interestingly enough, is Orpheus. That would be the serpent behind me. Why did they take the third celestial constellation? And you can look up on the constellation map or charts on the computer, and you'll see the big serpent. It's called Orpheus, but it's not on the horoscope when you go read it in the newspaper or on the internet. You're looking up your Aquarius or your Capricorn or Pisces or whatever. So they took out the serpent. Now that's a little telling. So we're all born in Aquarius or Sagittarius, which apparently labels us with some kind of characteristics of archetypes. Hope I'm not taking you too far out on this ride, but there is a purpose to it. One of the purposes is it might behoove us to understand consciousness and subconsciousness and our reality, to try to figure out this situation we're in and what a world lockdown and shutdown can do to the mass of people, and the consciousness, which is energy signals raising from the brain. We manifest our reality, and we manifest it because of what we think. Just like if you're walking in the jungle and it's a beautiful day and you're near a river and the fish are jumping and the birds are chirping and the squirrels are in the trees. It's just beautiful and everything is wonderful and you're frolicking with your lover. But all of a sudden, there's a jaguar or a lion or a tiger. You switch gears, you perceive something and you go into escape mode. When only moments ago you were totally enjoying the whole thing. So what we perceive makes us react. Months ago, a month or so ago, we were all going to work and maybe going down to the local eatery or the park and playing baseball, softball, whatever. And then going to bed and getting up, going to work, doing our thing, going to bed, going to work, making some money, paying the bills, having our problems, relationships, bang, bang, bang. And now everything is different. So our minds are transmitting different kinds of energies. And then we know full well with the astrological signs, we have different characteristics of humans, if you believe in that stuff. Or if you believe in Freud and Jung and Plato and Socrates and people throughout history, you know there are different types of people. And again, it says here you got a personality that might be a warrior, and it has the strengths and weaknesses on this chart. The child, the orphan, the creator, the caregiver, the mentor, the joker, the magician, the ruler, the lover, the rebel, the seducer. So some people act like an orphan. Oh, woe is me. Some people act like children. Some people act like warriors, creators, caregivers, you know, thoughtful people. So not everybody is the same. That's a given. And our reality is a result of the things that we perceive, like the lion or the tiger or everything really beautiful. Obviously, if you're going to work and you're making decent money and you can pay your bills and you're in a good relationship and you have children, you're probably in a more harmonious state of mind than if you come home and find your lover left you or in bed with somebody else and the money's all gone, you can't pay the bills, and the children just got arrested or they're doing drugs. You find yourself in a state of disharmony. So these are all true facts. And what's that have to do with this? Jung and Remote Viewing, Psychic and Anomalous Perception. So the first whole part of this book is these famous philosophers and thinkers were saying the things that we do, 50%, are a product of who we are, our archetypes. There's another chart. You got your hero, your jester, explorer, ruler, caregiver, innocent, enchantress, outlaw, magician, companion, actress, and sage. So according to these people who are seriously into the human mind and reality, we have archetypes of people. So some of those people, like it even says on these charts, you have your sage on the bottom there. You got your magician on the bottom there, transformation. And then you have this thing with the Kabbalah, which apparently the secret society, Zionist and evil people, Satanists, are into these communicating with spiritual beings in these different dimensions. And the idea for them to attain immortality is to rise up through the different spheres with their spiritual self while they're meditating or whatever state of mind. And so apparently they are interacting with these other types of beings. So that's what the first half of this book was trying to talk about, that our reality exists and that we exist, who we are, as a function of our upbringing, whether you're from Asia or Mexico, a Mayan or a German or Russian or whatever, Alaska, Eskimo, Hawaii, Kahuna, and your education. We are who we are, and apparently part of our physical, psychic consciousness makeup is apparently tied to where and when we were born, which gives us some kind of matrix programming, making some different people have different types of characteristics. Again, if you know anything about astrology, or if you know about psychology and archetypes. So apparently there's all kinds of different people with different propensities. In other words, some people will go to the dark side. Now we're getting somewhere. And do evil. Jeffrey Epstein, the Franklin cover-up, Kathy O'Brien, Foley in Congress apparently doing unsatisfactory thing with the young pages, the young boys, in the hallways of the Congressional building. And Aleister Crowley, known as the evilest man alive because he was accused of sex with children and doing satanic rituals sacrificing children. And historically, in Europe, 500, 600 years ago, and after that and before, there's books documenting it, but certain peoples into the Kabbalah were abducting children for religious satanic rituals, draining their blood and torturing them, apparently to get them to join the dark side. Crazy, I know, but it does exist. And here's the situation the way I see it. If we, the people, do not come to grips with these different archetypes, these different worlds, whether it's the God and heaven world or the fallen angels, I don't care what you call them. You can call them gray aliens, archons, demons, devils, Lucifer, Satan, with this other world, and these cults, these religious cults, who actually do rituals. So when certain women have babies, the soul comes from the underworld. It's sucked into this world. And generally speaking, from the heaven world, a lot of people are born in this world. So intentionally, the evil forces are bringing them from the underworld. And if you read anything, listen to astrologers or channelers, psychics, and contacting the Palladians or the Zetas or the Pixies or the Angels or different characters. You have to listen to what they're saying, and then you can kind of get an idea of who's who, where they're coming from, the underworld or the heaven world, the opposite of the Ten Commandment world or the Ten Commandment world, the evil or the good, the caring about people or the selfish, perverted, evil people. I know that's a lot to say. So anyways, I'm reading this book. Let me get it on the right side here. JUNG and Remote Viewing. So I think the solution is, because of the situation we're in with the world lockdown, a fundamental thing we all need to do is realize the world we're in, and that there are people pushing for control from the underworld, and then of course there is information and teaching from the heaven world, and we all have to make a decision. None of us are going to continue to live on earth forever. Everybody dies eventually, but I think it's kind of important to understand that there seems to be some kind of cosmic battle going on, and this other world does exist. So with that said, I'm going to start reading from this book and try to show that this is the case. There is a second component to our conscious reality, and that would be the subconscious reality. And some people are connected to the heaven world or influenced by it, and some people are connected to and influenced by the underworld. Just to give you a description that makes sense, that's actually in the Bible and in the books, the underworld, the fallen angels. And a lot of people are not connected to the heaven world or the underworld. They're oblivious, ignorant of, stupid if you want to call them that, and trying to be nice here. They just don't know, they're ignorant, and they don't want to know, and they allow what they see on the TV and the cartoons and the teaching from the schools, which is controlled by the underworld, so it seems, and they're allowing themselves to be influenced and taken to a bad place. And so my mind says to me that if people understood reality and understood what the subconscious world was, and that they can actually communicate with it and get help from it and ask questions with their mind and can actually perceive thoughts and change our reality. If people could understand and grasp the situation we're in, look at the symbols behind me. And look at the dollar bill. I mean, it's clear as day to me. Of course, I've been doing research for 15 years. But if you understand that what makes you who you are, whichever type of archetype you are, you know, you could be a person working at the hospital as a caregiver. You could be somebody in the military. You could be somebody who's an actress, somebody who works at a radio station, innocent, somebody who's married, taking care of kids, an outlaw. You could be an outlaw. We all have these different personalities, whether you want to call it because of the time you were born or just something to do with your soul. If you are a reincarnated being, maybe you have, this is your 4th or 5th or 6th or 8th incarnation as a human, depending on what different people believe. And you get the religions in Asia, and they believe in reincarnation. A lot of people believe in reincarnation. I tend to believe in reincarnation. I believe that Jesus was a spiritual entity in that biological body, came here to teach people things, and sent from the God world. I believe that. I believe that Muhammad in Islam was communicating with the Archangel Gabriel. I believe that. I believe the deities that communicated with the people to create Hinduism were some kind of entities, and there's some evil ones and good ones, and the Buddhists and the entities. So the spiritual world does exist, and our conscious reality is created by what we perceive to be real. And if they convince us of a false reality, then and we don't understand it, and we believe what they tell us, then you're going to get everybody at the supermarkets and in the parks standing 10, 15 feet apart, everybody with a mask on, everybody being suspicious, everybody being led into some unreal Twilight Zone world when it could be utter deception and nonsense. There's plenty of videos you can go watch on YouTube and stuff you can look at in the newspaper. Even President Donald Trump and his administration announced that they were withdrawing the funds from the WHO and the CDC, the World Health Organization, and the Center for Disease, because there were some anomalies going on. There were those charts that said this many people were going to die, and if they didn't lock everybody down, lesser people were going to die. And it was all based on charts, but then the feedback they were actually getting from the empty hospitals and everything made one scratch their head, and all these reports are out there. And even President Donald Trump and his people could sense that something's not adding up here. There are evil influences who apparently control the newspapers and the TV programming the news, and everybody's being led into believing something, hence their consciousness is creating something. And a lot of us don't understand reality. And also, if you do have the government into remote viewing, it's in this book, in other words, having trained people, soldiers, who can leave their body and look forward in time and backward in time, or see completely across the halfway around the world, the different places they can go spy on. If that part of reality is true, involving Carl Jung and Freud and Socrates and Plato and all these people mentioned in this book by David Shaver, if the other world does exist, the heaven world and the underworld, Hades, and if it's trying to influence us, and if there is a battle on Earth, a cosmic battle, to either have Earth turned into a heaven type of world or a underworld type of world. And apparently that could be the case. Even in the Lord's Prayer it says, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, up here, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And in the latter part of the prayer, I'm not trying to be a preacher here, I'm not. It says, lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil. So wait a minute. You put those two things together, temptation and evil, you're talking about down there, and you're talking about God, heaven on earth. The two worlds exist, and you talk about the Kabbalah people's own sephirots and their own teaching. Going into the spheres with your spiritual self. You talk about the archetypes of people. We're all born different kinds of people. We can get tempted. We can get caught up in evil. We can get caught up in confusion. We can be deceived. You got magicians out there. Outlaws preying on old people. Courageous people trying to tell you everything. Some people just want to have fun. Go to the beach. Some people are scientists, discoverers. Some people want to be an authority. But are they being influenced, a lot of people, by the underworld, by the new age, by the deception, or are they being influenced by the heaven world? And are the people controlling our planet trying to discredit the stuff that's in the Bible and other religious teachings? And the answer appears to be yes. So this whole thing with the world lockdown seems to be quite suspicious. And if we can understand reality, me taking the long road of this book here, does ESP exist? You can see on the back of it. So the mind-matter continuum, the mind-matter, here's a remote viewing machine. And this would be matter, Sharpie, matter, cup, matter. So mind and matter would be everything. Is there a connection between mind and matter? Connecting link not only between the mind and space, but also between science and divination. So a lot of people who are into mysticism, and I'm not saying divination by itself is necessarily evil. If you take a pendulum and you have a farm and you're going to dig a well, you might do well to get a piece of wood from your tree, a hickory tree or apple tree, and walk along and ask your mind, is there water under the ground? Is there water under the ground? And when you cross an underground stream, the twig, the branch, will actually start gyrating, and you put a stake in the ground. And you walk forward, and you step over 5 or 6 feet on your property, and you walk all the way back the other side, straight across, and you ask yourself, is there water underground? And when you come to that underground stream, this twig will twitch, and you'll put a stake in the ground. And when you get done, after zigzagging across your property, you're going to see this little line of stakes, and you're going to visually say to yourself, there's an underground stream following those stakes I put in the ground, because my mind asked it. And the subconscious mind, this other world that does exist in our daily lives, responds to my conscious mind asking the questions. Now again, I'm going to get back to this other thought. You have the underworld. You have forces that can influence us. You have the spiritual world, the heaven world, that can influence us. Maybe in the heaven world we can have deceased relatives influencing or trying to get messages to us. Maybe in the underworld we have people that are down there trying to get us to do evil things or whatever, gamble or whatever, drugs, whatever. Maybe they're influencing us. Maybe a lot of people are not intentionally influenced by either ones, but by their actions, they are allowing themselves to be influenced by one or the other, or both, and wind up being confused, torn human beings. I know, this is a lot to think. But I challenge anybody to go get a book like this, and go half the stuff that I research, go get the books or look up the stuff and use your own common sense, because I think if we can get a grip on reality and what's the truth, I believe we can stop the insanity that seems to be unfolding and unfolding. And even people, Dr. Brutar, who I thought was, I think is a good man, who's making videos, a doctor, and he's saying that this coronavirus, the stuff that they're saying, is all false, and it's all intended to bring about the global world order. And people who, like him, who are going to resist to be vaccinated, resist their control, will probably be shot in the head. That's what he says in his video. And so there are many of us who will resist. And there are a lot of people I've just mentioned here who don't know what to do, who will take the vaccine. And apparently once you take it once, they have new strains of these viruses every year. And apparently it's intended to be some kind of means of depopulating the planet. In other words, the vaccine might kill you, accidentally or intentionally. But I don't know why anybody would allow themselves to be stuck with things forcefully. But apparently they're using psychology. And if you want to go back to work or the world back to normal and not risk everything, take the shot, follow the rules, go to a cashless society. And people who continue to believe in Jesus or other religions, according to the Noahide laws, might wind up becoming criminals if they don't denounce their previous religions. So if you connect it, if you believe in the spirit world, high heaven or the underworld and this other world, then you need to know who you're in communication with and who you're praying to, instead of operating out of lack of knowledge. All right, so according to this, the mind-matter continuum is a connecting link not only between the mind and space, but also between science and divination. So people using divination, contacting the subconscious mind, or Kabbalah, contacting beings from another dimension, apparently the underworld dimension. It is a place where the religious mystic, the deep psychologist, the quantum physicists can meet and explore how they all may be discussing the same reality using different metaphors. The quantum physics experiments discussed in the previous chapter demonstrate the subjective nature of science. The examination of these experiments by the observer not only influences the experiments, but the observer actually became part of the reality of the experiment. The same is also true. Reading from the book here, that was page 67, with divination. Divination, there you go, there's all kinds of ways to do divination. Historically, they would have these little stones and throw them on the ground, or sticks if you were Asian, and the way they fell, because there is this interconnectedness between the conscious world and the material world, the unconscious world. When you were asking questions, throwing the sticks or the stones on the ground, you were asking questions, and then you were throwing them. Apparently, your 50% connection to the unconscious world, the spiritual world, could influence how those stones fell and how those sticks fell, and that would give you different messages. And if you did it 2 or 3 times and the answer was always the same, then the divine world was telling you what you wanted to know, or the underworld was telling you what you wanted to know. Divination. Divination is the process of perception through the use of intuition. So when you ask things, when you pray to God, or you're asking your own mind, you say, I wonder what this is all about. But you get intense about it and you say, I want to know what this is all about. You give an instruction to your mind. And then the mind world responds to that question and starts putting these little droplets of information in front of you. Maybe it's a link where a video pops up, or a book your eye catches in a bookstore, or a newspaper headline. Once you start asking, what's up? I want to know, the other half of you, the subconscious part of you, starts to deliver. According to this book and a lot of my other research. That's the key thing I want people to take away from this. This other half of us, this subconscious half of us, we can control our reality. And if 85 or 90% of the world are blindly believing what the government is telling them and the newspapers are telling them, and these people in charge of the WHO or the other medical organizations or secret societies, elites like Mr. Bill Gates and his obsession with depopulation and other people, if everybody's going to believe what those people tell them, they're obviously going to lead them down the path of destruction. That's what I believe and what I'm seeing and perceiving, and using my higher level of mind to lead me down to the path to get books like this and read it and make these videos. And I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I don't want people to believe me. I want people to listen to this material, take some notes like I do, and think it through and go research it, and then come away with your conclusions. Because I don't think somebody who's an Islamic person, an Arab from Iraq, is going to see eye to eye with a Christian from Maine, or somebody from a Mayan from Mexico is not going to see eye to eye with a Buddhist from China. But I think when you talk about the conscious world and the subconscious world, wherever you come from, is still the unconscious spiritual world does exist. Carlos Castaneda, in his information about going to Mexico and spending a lot of time with the Shama, taking peyote, and seeing this other reality, Carlos Castaneda, you could look up his books, or gotta remember these names, The one guy going over there to Hawaii, Max Long, and writing all his books, and people going to Peru and spending time with the Peruvian shamans. There's plenty of information out there. So the spiritual world does exist, and we can be influenced by the people from apparently an evil sphere, underworld, whatever you want to call it, or we can be influenced by the heavenly world, and apparently it is our intention and our choice which one is influencing us and having something to do with our behavior, which affects ourselves, our lives, our souls, our families, and ultimately the whole world. And if we get roped into violence and protest, we're going to feed into the powers that be that control our government's hand. They have the tools. We can't fight them. Electromagnetic transmitters called crowd control trucks, and cell phone transmissions, satellite, laser beams, artificial intelligence, SWAT teams, drones, and so much more. We've seen the testing of all of this stuff for the past 10, 15, 20 years, Jade Helm 15. So I just wanted people to know that the government knows a lot. They have remote viewers who can leave their bodies. They know what's really going on. The remote viewers can see into the future and the past. These people know what they're doing. And if you observe what they are doing, you judge for yourself whether it's good or evil. The falseness of the dumping chemicals in the sky to combat global warming, then calling it climate change. And in the 1960s, it was global cooling, then sustainability, then terrorism, 9/11, John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, convincing leaders all over the world to borrow millions and billions of dollars and then going bankrupt. And the countries they couldn't control, they would invade and kill the president and put their puppet guy in charge. A lot of evil has gone on to get us to where we are today. And apparently the government is clearly into remote viewing. You can get this book. I know you want to know more about remote viewing, but I told you more about it than you probably will understand with the first half of this book, just trying to get people to understand that the unconscious world that interacts with us does exist. And here in history, they've been using divination. A lot of people know this. So it makes you wonder why the evil forces who are into the Kabbalah tell their people who get initiated under the oath and threat of death that if they divulge the secrets of these communication with spiritual beings and spiritual worlds, that they will die a very horrific death. And there's some of the symbols behind me. Divination practices literally date back to antiquity and concretely reveal the illusion of inner and outer of this mind-matter continuum. In this chapter, we will explore the three methods of divination. The first of which is the Eastern divination, the I Ching. And I'm not going to go over this because I just gave you a little lesson on divination. And I've been learning about this because when I started studying, researching people like Nikola Tesla and other historical scientists and famous people, I found out they were into this. And even the church knew about it. And for a time, the church banned understanding how to use this with your subconscious. And then they approved it. It was one priest, Mesmer was his name. And he would go around to towns and cities all over Europe where people whose well had dried up. And he would walk along with his pendulum and ask his mind the question, is there water under here, water under here? And when he stepped over the water, it would gyrate like that. And he would put a stake in the ground, and then they would dig the well there, and there it was. Even in Britain area, the British and the Germans would use the pendulum and ask in their mind, is there gold here? And they would find veins of gold underground and other things. Even some people into law enforcement would track down a murderer with a pendulum. Which direction did he go? And they would hold the pendulum east, west, and when they got to the right direction, it would start gyrating. People who have disappeared in Michigan, for example, they would call a psychic and say, where did this person go? And they would hold it over a map. This is how interesting the brain communicates with the other world. And the forces from the subconscious world, the invisible reality, that psychic who was connected, it would hold it over a map, and all of a sudden it would twitch at a particular position, and it would be, let's say, a lake that was frozen over, and that person would have taken his car or truck out onto the lake, like they do up north in the wintertime. I've driven my car in Maine on the lakes, and sometimes it's a big mistake, because you can hit a sheet of ice that's not frozen over thick enough, and you go right down through it. But they would find in the spring that they would go to that location after the ice had thawed, and there would be that person in that vehicle. So I'm trying to say divination and remote viewing and the perception and knowledge of the people who control our world is into these things. It's in the Bible. It's part of this black magic, Kabbalah stuff, and some of it may not be nefarious. Even some police departments who are trying to find a murderer and they have no clues, they call on a psychic. And there are many books published about that the psychic would come in and hold on to some piece of material from the site of the murder, or go to that room and close their eyes and have ask their mind what happened here. And all of a sudden they have this vision, and somebody's there that writes down everything the psychic says, and it helps them find out who the murderer was. So my point is, when you talk about Carl Jung and Freud, going all the way back to Socrates and Plato throughout history and the Bible, divination is in the Bible. So I'm saying that the people who control our reality with all of these obviously Kabbalah, mystery religion of Babylon symbols, and into remote viewing, who can see into the future and the past, they know what they're doing. They know what's going on. They know what they have to battle against, the forces from heaven. And they know that they don't want people getting close to each other and organizing with each other, discussing these things with each other. They have to cancel YouTube accounts and Facebook accounts, and in my case, Vimeo accounts, and censoring materials on the other sites, and people being murdered and disappeared. We need to understand that these two worlds exist, the heaven world and the underworld, and apparently there are strong forces interacting with this world, and they have plans. And if we, the people, can wake up and communicate with the right world and understand that these people who are controlling our world know fully well what they're doing. They're into this stuff. So here's the top of this next page here. Look at the name of the title: Synchronicity and Extrasensory Perceptions. Future unfolds. Wisdom is acquired by foreseeing the future, but also by understanding the past. And it says here, the third element associated with the book of wisdom is judgments. Now this brings me to another piece of my conversation. And believe it or not, the first part of this whole 2/3 of the book was all about different evidences that the unseen world does exist, and it's part of our activity. So let me pause this for a minute so I can get some light back on my video. All right, the sensor on the camera kind of dims out the light when it beams into it, so the thing looks dark. Weirdly enough, when you talk about synchronicity and coincidences, my significant other came out here to the patio and said, "You should come watch what I'm watching on YouTube. I'm listening to a David Icke video, and he's talking about his experiences with ayahuasca, psychic experiences, and even psychically, intuitively telling the taxi cab driver to pull over and go." He went out in the field, and he stood there all alone, and some angel talked to him for an hour, and some weird stuff. And I told her, I said, "Isn't it weird that you're watching that on the video, and I'm reading a book on this, thinking about how can I explain to people that the solution to our issues is to wake up to reality of what's true and not true, and realize who we're battling against and what they know how to do." These people in the secret societies, they don't have their members swear under threat of death that they'll be killed in a horrific way if it wasn't something they didn't want us to know. And these kinds of things that I'm talking about are exactly that. And it has everything to do with what's going on in the world today. Everything to do with taking over the school system. Everything to do with the discrediting of Christianity. Everything to do with 911 and destroying all those towns and cities and water supplies and sewer systems and commercial buildings all over the Middle East. Everything to do with the elites taking trillions and trillions out of the money banking systems of our countries. Everything to do with their plans for depopulation. So if you didn't do anything but grew up and became a Bible student and read what was in the Bible, what your preacher told you, you would come along the whole same line of thinking that I'm coming from a rational point of view, which you call it a secular point of view, not a religious point of view. People like Carl Jung or Freud and all these people, they weren't overly religious, but they were scientists and psychologists and physicists. And they're using this stuff as evidence that I'm talking about. Look what it says right there in the middle of this book. The manipulations of sticks and coins is repeated 5 or more times until a hexagram of 6 lines is produced. This is the Asian method of divination, throwing the sticks and stones down to get the different patterns, to kind of tell you the different solutions, and the way the patterns unflowed, laid out. You get the joyous, the cringing, the gentle, the keeping still, the abysmal, the arousing, the reception, the creative. So throughout history, the Asians were throwing sticks and rocks on the ground. So were people all over the world. In Greece and in all the tribal peoples had their different sources of divination connecting with the other world. The questionnaire, therefore, on the bottom here is irrevocably linked to this process of divination. So I'm not trying to teach divination. I just want people to know that it exists. Apparently our governments are into it. It's in the Bible, right here. In the Bible, many locations, it talks about Urim and Thummim. And apparently Saul had expelled the mediums and the wizards from the land. And seek out for me a woman who is a medium, a psychic, on the bottom there, so that I may go to her and inquire of her. In the Bible, it mentions where that stuff is in the Bible. Samuel 28, 3-7. And over here it says that the Hebrew god Yahweh provided to the Israelites in order to make his will known to them. Deuteronomy 33.8 in the Bible reveals that Moses directed Levi to carry Urim and Thummim in order to consult with their god Yahweh. Most biblical scholars agree with Urim and Thummim were either 2 rocks or 2 pieces of wood. This is sometimes referred to in the Bible as casting lots. Okay, here we are. Do you believe this is in the Bible? Do you believe what JUNG and the government having remote viewers, that they actually have these kinds of technologies and they're using it against us? Do you believe they can see into the future and see into the past? Do you believe that they know things that they don't want us to know? Do you believe that they're taking action for a very serious reason? Do you believe we're being deceived? Do you believe we need to wake up? The casting of Urim and Thummim, the sticks or stones, in divination was used in a variety of circumstances throughout the Bible, such as the selection of a scapegoat. Leviticus 16:8-10. You don't learn this stuff everywhere, but this stuff should be taught to everybody if it's real. That part 50% of us is a makeup of our subconscious mind. That's important. Why we do things we do. Why we feel like we do. Why some people are loving and giving, and some people are rebellion, and some people are stable. Some people thrive for authority. The influences that make up the archetypes from Freud and Jung and these other scientists throughout history. You can go on Yahoo image site and just put in, look up the archetypes, and you'll get these charts, and you'll see that if this all is true that I'm sharing in this video, is it important? If this other world exists, if the spiritual world exists, if the underworld exists, and Kabbalah is the religion they're going to try to force on all of us. And it even says right in here, these lower levels are the underworld on these Sephiroth trees. Malkuth, number 11, on this tree of life in the middle here of this video, says Malkuth. That's the underworld. It took me a long time to try to figure out this Kabbalah religion, and apparently the Kabbalah historically is the religion of the Jews, and whatever things they practice apparently was incompatible with the Christians, part of the sacrificial rituals of draining blood from little boys in buckets and using it in some of their rich satanic rituals to curry favor from the demons from the underworld. Who wants to say this stuff? Not me. But it's what has unfolded when I've done my research. So apparently modern remote viewing gets people to understand that the other world does exist, and letting your mind go free and letting your hand draw something on its own, letting the other world take control of your hand. Remote viewing is used to describe geological locations, unknown objects and activities, and mental states of people. As such, the initial drawing, ideogram, as it is called, is considered the best unconscious pictorial representation of the object being viewed. So I thought about that for a minute. So they let their mind go blank, and they put a pencil, ink pen in their hand, and they just think about something. Let's say they think about St. Petersburg, Russia, and they tell their mind that there's a weapons facility there, and they want to know what's there, and their mind goes blank, and all of a sudden they come back and they see this drawing that their hand did, and they're taught to interpret it as a building behind a mountain. I just drew that quickly. So they look at a map and they see there's a mountain, they see there's a big building. So apparently the subconscious mind, 50% of all of us, each of us has a subconscious mind, and it directs and controls some of our behavior, the way we feel, what we think. And we can be connected, in my opinion, to the underworld entities, the heaven world entities, which are mental decisions. Accept Jesus Christ as my Savior, and I believe in God, and I mentally tell myself I do not want the underworld influencing my brain and giving me thoughts like the Lord's Prayer says, lead me not into temptation, deliver me from evil. So it's a mental decision. This is the key. When people are apathetic, we all know they were destroying and killing all those people in the Middle East after 9/11. Most of us knew that they didn't do it. And so many other cases. And when people mentally choose not to care, not to get involved, not to make decisions, not to protest, not to talk to God and get the problem fixed, are those people just as guilty as the perpetrators when they know what was right and wrong? You get these doctors like Dr. Buttar and other doctors, Mercola, and they're risking their whole medical careers getting out there saying, wait a minute, viruses can't jump 10 feet. They can't even jump 2 feet. They can't even leave a body. A virus is not a biological entity. That's why it doesn't get killed by antibiotics. It's a toxin. It's a poison. The doctors are saying it better than me. But apparently, mentally, consciously, they're putting the whole world in lockdown and creating this frustration and stress. And people, it's predictable. People will riot or rebel or protest. And apparently, as far as I'm concerned, they're trying to bait everybody into that mode of operation. They know it's inevitable. The supermarkets run out of food. They know the people are going to protest against the governments. They have to know. Anybody would know. They knew it even during the O.J. Simpson trials and other situations, like the parades they have in our city's downtown areas, the gay pride parades, the women's march parades, the white pride parades. They know. They orchestrated it. They designed the websites. George Soros gave the Women's Marchers organizations millions of dollars. They can predict our behavior. They can influence what we believe. And a lot of people, like myself included, historically, we would get frustrated. You know, we didn't really care about those issues. Let me live my life. But apparently, that's not a good thing. That isn't why, if God put us here, why we're here, just to be apathetic and thoughtless, non-thinking people. Apparently, that's not why we're here. But for some people with these satanic rituals, where they actually have these women laying on altars, praying, while on an adjoining altar, they kill a young man, like it was in the Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book, to eliminate the opate. And the opate was people's belief in the higher world, which is like a drug, makes people comfortable. To eliminate the opate, apparently, in the Hitler regime, they had a lady laying down on an altar. And I may put this stuff in my videos. You can get Rabbi Marvin Antelman's books, To Eliminate the Opate, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And so they sacrificed a Munich gypsy man while she laid there for some demon to appear, to impregnate her so that they could bring in a spiritual leader from the underworld. This is in Rabbi Marvin Antelman's book. And Rabbi Marvin Antelman was the leader of the Jewish Congress in the United States. No small guy. He pointed out in his books that the Zionist Kabbalah Jewish people were behind a lot of the upheavals involving all the riots and protests with the black people and other organizations. So behind the scenes, these people into this Kabbalah type religion are methodically creating chaos and anarchy in our reality for a purpose. I hope this video doesn't get shut down. I was trying to think what to talk about, you know, and I would want people to be convinced. And you take a name like Jung and Freud and David Shaver writing this book, and foreword by the Defense Intelligence Agent Remote Viewer, Lynn Buchanan, retired. So the foreword to this book is by the Defense Intelligence Agency Remote Viewer, Lynn Buchanan, retired. And the first 2/3 of this book is just trying to show that Socrates and Freud and Plato and Jung were saying that 50% of our reality is coming from someplace else. Is that we're connected to some kind of group consciousness and our unconsciousness. Our unconsciousness. Your dreams that you have, and the thoughts that you have, and the ideas that you have, and the fears that you have. You're influenced by forces from the underworld or the higher world, heaven world, or both, or a group consciousness feel what everybody else is fearing and thinking, influencing our reality. Anyways, a little bit more here. According to the remote viewers, they would use their intuitive minds and ask questions, and then their hand would, on its own, draw the lines. And they got very skillful at it, and they could interpret what that meant. Just like people looking for water or dead bodies, police departments and psychics, etc. We're using divination. Apparently, our minds are connected to the unconsciousness, and you can tap into that reality and that world and get information. And I'm here to say now that the evil forces know very well how to do this. There was one other page. Oh yeah, it did mention on here, when they drew these lines, they call these things ideograms. So they would get these shapes. The remote viewers, controlled by the government. There's the foreword in this book by the Defense Intelligence Agency remote viewer, Lynn Buchanan. You can look all this up. So they get these little shapes. They're called ideograms. And I had this thought. Ideograms, where have I heard that before? So I went on the computer, and ideograms are designs. Like we all know what a stop sign looks like, the 6 hexagon shape. Those are ideograms. Those are things to capture our subconscious mind to influence us, to make our conscious mind have certain ideas. The ideograms is recognized by our subconscious mind, which we can probably see out of our eyes and our bodies. It's not our thoughts, that's our conscious mind. So the subconscious mind, if it's 50% of us, can recognize these symbols and trigger certain ideas. That's why they have these symbols, these ideograms mentioned in remote viewing. So I went online and I just put in there ideograms. I know this is out there, but we know the symbols we see are everywhere. Ideograms, the corporate logos, all of that stuff connects our bodies and our ideas to the subconscious reality. I realize that's a whole lot to consume. Ideograms, geometric shapes affecting our subconscious, and that affects what our conscious mind thinks and the ideas that are created and our belief system. So what we can say is the ideograms, the symbols that they're using, even the logos for major TV channels, the eye and the symbols on the dollar bill, ideograms affect our subconscious, which gives ideas to our conscience, which makes us believe and act in different ways. Wow. Thought I'd just talk about something different and how this whole lockdown and how all this thinking process can serve some evil society's plans for a global world order. They know what they're doing. That I believe. They know how to control people, to look into the future and the past. They know the truth about reality. They're not telling us the truth. First they were going to shut down for a couple of weeks, then it's a month, now they're talking a couple of months. May take 2 years, people have to take vaccines. We keep just going along and going along and going along and going along. Reminds me of the Pinocchio movie, where the 2 animals were leading him into the paradise island to be enslaved. Thanks for watching my video. There's a comment section below. Let me know what you think. If you see any crazy things in the world, like setting up of military equipment or strange things, I'd like to know. I'd like photographs, and we'll talk about it and get it out there. But I think we all need to wake up to reality. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Merico reporting.